When you're a genius, life can be grand. You comprehend, you understand. Hulk Hogan is laid to rest. He is the genius, he is the best.
Behold, the genius Lanny Poffo, the world's smartest man.
Sometimes what goes on behind the scenes is stronger than the soap opera on the video scope.
You're listening to the Genius Cast with Lanny Poffo and co-host JP Zarka of ProWrestlingStories.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the poet and limerick writing, motivational speaking brother of WWE Hall of Famer Randy Savage, the Genius, Leaping Lanny Poffo!
Hello again, wrestling fans. This is Lanny Poffo, and here's my friend, the master of all he surveys,
JP Zarka of ProWrestlingStories.com. Lanny, how you been since we've last talked?
Oh, I'm doing great. And you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm a bit tired. We got in last night at about 1 in the morning. We were in Italy for the last few days.
We're in Italy.
We flew into Naples. We were staying in Naples for 4 days. We went up to Pompeii, which was about a 30-minute train ride from there, and we saw the ruins, which was fantastic. And then we did a day trip over to Sorrento, which was gorgeous. It's right off the coast there, the Mediterranean, and yeah, it was really good fun. A lot of good food, a lot of drinking, and I think my hangover is over, and my stomach is adjusting to having normal food again after eating such great food. But yeah, it was a really great time. Have you been to Italy before?
Oh, yes, I've been to Italy before. Yes, I've been to Roma, and I've been to Milan, the island of Sardinia. I've been to Lucca, where my grandparents are from, and I've been to Florence and Pisa, where the Leaning Tower is.
Right.
But you were in Naples. That's where they invented pizza over 100 years ago.
That's right. Of course. You know, being a food fanatic, my wife and I, we tend to travel to different places in the world just for the food, and Napoli was one of those places for that. We definitely had pizza every single day we were there. I've got some family from Naples. My grandfather's parents, they were from Naples, and he was the first American born from that side. And we've also got some family from Calabria. Now, I've never been to Calabria before, but it's on my list. No, Italy, there's just this feeling in the air, you know, there's like a romanticness, also this hardness. I find with the Italians, they either love you or they want nothing to do with you. We were on the train to Pompeii and there was a guy who wouldn't even look at us because my daughter was making too much noise. She was singing Itsy Bitsy Spider, which most people would find to be cute, but he wanted nothing to do with it. But no, we had such a great time. Now, Naples, there's a grittiness to it. A lot of cars on the streets, a lot of motorbikes. There's a smell in the air, you know, probably from the exhaust from the vehicles and, you know, the Mediterranean being right there. Lots of graffiti, but I kind of like that harshness. I like the food, I like the people, I loved it all, and we'll definitely be going back there again soon.
In Napoli, where love is king, when boy meets girl, here's what they say. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. Sing with me.
It's amore. I actually don't know the words to that song, and I should. I know my grandpa, he's rolling in his grave.
Bells will ring, tippy tippy tippy. Never mind, we're not going to do that. Okay, we're losing listeners right now. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, but we're actually building up our Italian listenership, which is great. Now, speaking of other countries listening to our show, we have been ranking in the top 10 in Argentina for the last week and a half. So, to our fans in Argentina, thank you for listening to the Genius Cast. I hope you're enjoying what you hear.
You know what I'd like to do then? I'd like to get Pampero Firpo on the show. I know he's, you know, I get some help with his daughter Mary, but he's from Buenos Aires, and he's the guy that Randy took the "ooh yeah" from, you know, except it was "ooh yeah." You know, he did it differently, but he's starting to lose his cognitive ability. But if he's got any left, I'd love to get him on our show because Pampero Firpo was one of the all-time greats. And can you imagine?
Yeah, it would be a fantastic privilege to have Furpo on our show. And you mentioned his daughter, Mary. She's a follower of our show. We get messages from her from time to time. It's always good to hear from her.
Yes, it is. She's a terrific girl. She's got a master's degree. She's a teacher. Her husband is a policeman in San Jose, California. And just the best people.
And we like good people. So what you've been up to? You've been home now for about a week and a half, 2 weeks from Japan. And I catch you at weird hours. Now, of course, being in London, I'm 5 hours ahead of you. But I usually catch you when you wake up, which is about 5 in the morning in Tampa, which is 10 in the morning for me. It works out perfectly. But yeah, your sleep schedule's still all whacked up, isn't it?
It's because of those naps I take. And then I can't sleep at night, so it's fine. No big deal. I mean, there's other people that have a heavier cross to bear.
Right.
But it's all my fault.
Yeah, first world problems. They say when you travel halfway across the world, just to stay up, you got to force yourself through it, even though you're tired. Stay up, go to bed at the normal time, and then hopefully you'll wake up at the normal time after that. When I went to Australia a couple years back, it took me about a week to adjust. Hopefully you'll be back on schedule.
By the way, I got an email from somebody from Perth, and he loved my story that I met that Aborigine girl that was 10 years old. He said, "You're my favorite wrestler." And he flipped. And, we're getting all these emails, and we are touching people's lives. I'm very happy about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're getting emails from all over the world. We had one from Venezuela the other show, and, we were talking about how we're ranking in Argentina. Another country we're surprisingly ranking in is in Poland. We were in the top 20 a few weeks in a row. So thank you to our Polish fans. Polska.
Dzień dobry. And you know what? I blame it all on you. I tell everybody that if it wasn't for JP Zarka, we would be swimming in excrement because this guy knows how to promote, and he's a real P.T. Barnum. He gets the word out. And what's really exciting is you launched a YouTube thing for the Genius Cast. Tell them about that.
Yes, we have been so blessed to have Corey Rivard. Now, he's somebody who knows you. He's met you, and in fact, you're a friend of his sister's. He reached out to us a few weeks back saying he'd like to help out in any way. He's a listener of the show. He loves the Poffos, and he's doing everything on YouTube. So go on youtube.com right now, search The Genius Cast with Lanny Poffo, hit subscribe. We've got all the best clips from each of our episodes so far, and he does this really good thing with the editing where, you got animations in there, and, it really makes what we're talking about come to life. You'll love it. So if you've missed an episode and you're thinking about going back and listening to like episode 3 or episode 6 or 7, what have you, go onto our page. You can click through, hear a couple bits. Maybe you'll like it and you'll tune in. But thank you to Corey. You've been doing an amazing job. Subscribe there and tell 17 friends.
Excellent.
We're about to have our show with Evan Ginzburg, who I owe knowing you to him.
That's right. And I'll never forgive him. I'm just kidding. No, really. I'm part Italian and part Jewish. So I always tease him because he's fully Jewish, and he is stereotypical of a New York Jew. I'll tell you what, we've never had a contract between Evan and I. It's only been a handshake. And because you're a friend of his, it's only been a handshake with us too, right?
Absolutely.
We don't have a contract between us. And Evan, I've known him for many, many years. He's never let me down. And you've never let me down, and I'll never let you down. And I make this promise in front of, we're not going to end up in people's court, you and I.
Oh, no. No, it's not about that. It's about just having a passion for talking, sharing the past, and, hopefully people enjoy what we're doing. But no, there's no contracts between us. It's everything split down the middle. And, with Evan, it was back in July of just a few months back. I went to go visit him in Queens, New York. And he was promoting the movie 350 Days, which was a documentary you were a part of. And he was associate producer. So I flew out there. I took a week off work to do this. And, I met Greg the Hammer Valentine. I met J.J. Dillon, Tito Santana. I met yourself. And it was on one of those days where he's like, I've got Lanny coming out. He's doing this autograph session, near my house. Come out. We'll grab some food and, you just get to meet him. And I was like, absolutely. So I took the train from Brooklyn, where I was staying over at my buddy's place. And, you and I, we hit it off right off the bat. Even before we sat down, we were laughing. And, I'm very grateful for that chance meeting. And it was just right after that, we became friends, and the idea of the show came about. And Of course, you mentioned to me that you have had a lot of people ask you to do a podcast. What was it about me that made you want to do the show?
I didn't want to do any work. Okay, that's the reason I didn't want to do a podcast. And you promised me you would do all the work and I just have to sit and talk on this microphone. And you know what? I haven't done anything and you've done it all. And you've done a masterful job. And I cannot believe that in only 12 weeks, we're up with a bullet and we're getting so popular and people are stopping me. And even when I was in Japan, they said, hey, I listened to your podcast. And I said, it's like amazing, that we're really getting out there. And of course, the momentum now, what we've got to do, we've got some surprises, don't we, coming up? You know what I mean? We're not going to say what they are, but it's going to be better than ever. And it's going to be exciting. And what I really like is the fans interacting because I think they want to be a part of the show too.
Speaking of fans, I want to thank Kieran McLeod for sending in that clip of her singing at the start of our show. She's a fan of yours from Scotland. And you met her when you did some shows out there back in, August?
Yeah, August. I can't remember the date, but she was there. She's a professional singer. She's a friend of the Scottish Wrestling Entertainment promotion. And I can't wait to get back there. That was they treated me very nicely.
We love this type of interaction. So we do mention, and we've mentioned in the past, record yourself doing something, whether it's reading a poem that you've written or singing a song or asking a question to Lanny or myself. It doesn't matter. We'll put it in our show because this podcast is for you guys. It's not, yes, we get enjoyment out of this too, but we want to make this about you guys as much as possible. So continue to send your things in over to thegeniuscast@prowrestlingstories.com. That's our email. Or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, @thegeniuscast. And, we've got a lot of people helping out. It's not just me. We got a lot of other people on board. We got Joe Stasi and Ted Gilmer from the ICW, the Poffos. It's a Facebook page. Follow them. Really, really good, just stories and pictures and video content from, before you guys were with the WWF. Really excellent stuff. They're helping out with the social media. So most of the pictures you're seeing on the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts is coming from them. Like I mentioned, we've got Corey Rivert helping us out with the YouTube side of things. And Kevin Meeker, he's been awesome. He does all our logos. It's a big team effort over here. Very happy to be a part of this. I'm happy to have you guys listening and spreading the word. It means the world to us. So thank you.
Yes, it's exciting. And I'm so happy that you twisted my arm until I capitulated. Yes, I will try the podcast. And the Genius Cast. I didn't even think of the name. You did. You know what I'm thinking? And I said, well, that's catchy, because I like it short and sweet, The Genius Cast. It sounds like you broke your arm and you got a Genius Cast.
Now, hopefully when people listen, they do feel a bit more like a genius, hopefully learning new things each week. And, the name just came to me, and sometimes that's the best way forward. You don't want to think too much about these things, and then it gets a bit, convoluted and it becomes work. And that's not what this is about. This isn't about work. I'm enjoying every minute of this, and hopefully you guys are too. Speaking of the name Genius, we all know what rhymes with genius.
Hello, Trixie.
Hello, Lanny.
Okay. Your husband, you were telling me, had a performance problem.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Kind of a meatloaf situation?
Yeah, kind of.
And what did you get him?
Blue Chew.
Blue Chew?
Yes.
Say it again.
Blue Chew. It's amazing.
Well, in what way is it amazing?
Well, shall we say harder, faster, stronger?
How about length?
Oh, yes.
And thickness?
Absolutely.
How is it with your chafing?
Well, I'll deal with it.
So you're very happy. You were a frustrated, desperate housewife.
I was.
And now you're in the pink.
Absolutely. It's great.
Now, what do you have to say to all those men that are ashamed to get Blue Chew?
Oh, don't be ashamed. You'll be so happy you got it.
Remember, Blue Chew, it's for you.
BlueChew.com brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. You could take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach. And since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill, so you can be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew's prescribed online, and it ships straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor's visits, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Now, listeners, right now, we've got a special deal. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment when you use the special promo code GENIUS. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com. Promo code GENIUS to try it free. Blue Chew's the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring our podcast. So we're going to have Evan Ginzburg on the line. He was the associate producer for the movie The Wrestler. He writes on ProWrestlingStories.com. He has been doing radio in New York for many, many years. He used to do the Wrestling Then and Now newsletter. But again, we thank him for Lanny and I knowing each other. And, you know, Evan is an overall fantastic human being. I consider him a very good friend. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview, which is going to start now. It is a pleasure to have Evan Ginzburg on the line with us today. He was associate producer for the movie The Wrestler in 350 Days, starring Bret Hart and superstar Billy Graham. That movie just came out. It's really awesome. I hope more information about that comes out soon so you guys can watch it too if you haven't already. He's the host of the Evan Ginzburg Show, which can be seen and heard on Village Connection Radio Vision on Sundays from 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Evan, how you doing today?
I'm good. It's an honor to be on with you guys.
Well, the pleasure is mine, I'll tell you that much. Evan, thank you for many, many years of friendship. And, you know, we never had to sign a contract between us. Our word was good enough. That's very rare.
Business on a handshake, and Killer Kowalski was the same way, and Johnny Valiant, and Nikolai, and, you know, a lot of the old school guys are very honorable, unlike many of the promoters. You know?
The name Nick Goulas comes to mind.
Okay. You would know better than me.
Yes.
So you're quite a busy guy. I mean, you teach. You're into music. You are doing your radio show. You used to put out a wrestling newsletter, Wrestling Then and Now. You've been a wrestling fan for years. You got a story to share. I'm interested. Let's start from the top. Now, when did you first get into wrestling?
I was sitting at home in the early 70s, I would say 1972, and I'm on the UHF dial, which no longer exists. I'm sure Lanny remembers. And I'm flipping the channels, the 10 or 12 channels that actually were on there, and I see this Indian getting pounded by this much larger guy, and it turns out it was wrestling, and it was Lanny's quote-unquote favorite, Chief J. Strongbow, getting pounded by this. I don't even remember who it was, and I'm a kid, and I'm watching this, and I literally don't know what it is. And then I'm like, wow, you know, he starts doing this like herky-jerky war dance, and next thing you know, he's pinning the far bigger guy, and you know, then there's all these promos. Back then it was like all squash matches. It was very different from Raw and Smackdown today, where all the stars are wrestling. But I was just fascinated, and in my head it was the equivalent of Marvel or DC superheroes and supervillains, and I started watching religiously, and then I discovered the LA territory on TV with John Tolos and the Hollywood Blondes and Gordman and Goliath and Oliver Humperdinck, and, you know, just these amazing Blassie, of course. And then I discovered the Florida territory on New York TV with Gordon Soley making every match sound like the Super Bowl and the World Series rolled into one. And you had the Briscoes and the Funks and some of the greatest wrestlers, the Assassins. I mean, just unbelievable talent in Florida. And, you know, I was just obsessed at that point as a kid. And finally, my father, who was a cab driver who never broke 25 grand, he took me to Madison Square Garden. And it was the Valiant brothers against Dean Ho and Tony Gurria, and it was with Lou Albano, no less. And it was Blassie and Nikolai against Bruno and Strongbow in the main event. was June 24, 1974. I even remember the date. And it was just like, it's just a lifelong passion, which, has changed over the years, but that's how I started watching. And I started going to the Garden and the Nassau Coliseum and Westchester County Center with my dad, like religiously, 2-3 times a month. And that was during the WWF era, pre-Hogan, in the 70s. Yeah.
Now, you saw some classics. I mean, I'm very lucky to have you writing for ProWrestlingStories.com, where you get to share your stories. And go on Pro Wrestling Stories and look up my top 5 moments from Madison Square Garden. Break down some of the best things you saw over at the MSG.
Sure. Off the top of my head, Bruno and Billy Graham, although it was, very basic meat and potatoes, punch, kick, it was magic. It was just magic. I mean, the building literally vibrated. It shook. And, no pyro, no entrance music, just 2 guys walking down the ring with sheer charisma. Bruno and Spiros Arion. Back then when people turned, it meant something. And Arion turned on Bruno and they wrestled 3 straight months. And every Greek taxi driver in New York was at the matches, and it was just amazing. And Pat Patterson came in; he was tremendous. I know he's not Lanny's favorite person.
No, wait a minute. I said he was a great worker, and I never said he wasn't. I just said he prevented Randy from wrestling Shawn Michaels and finishing his career with perhaps the greatest match that never happened. So I did not say that Pat wasn't a great worker, but let me ask you a question. How old were you when did you feel hoodwinked when you realized that Chief Jay Strongbow's war dance was not Indian, it was Italian?
It was interesting. As a kid, I was a total mark. I was a kid, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was it's quite a story. The older kids, and this is in the pre-internet days, they told me straight out, they go, superstar Billy Graham is going to win the title from Bruno on April 30th, 1977, and they're telling me this 2 months in advance, and it's exactly what happened, okay? So it's like, okay, so now I'm aware. It's a work, and I just looked at it differently. But, it's like if you're watching a movie, let's say from that era, Clint Eastwood's not shooting the guy, Bruce Lee's not killing the guy, Charles Bronson isn't killing the muggers, it is what it is, and I appreciated it on a different level. So, yeah, not that long into it, I was made very well aware that it was a work and that, yes, Chief Jay Strongbow was Italian and et cetera, so on. But I still enjoyed it nonetheless. And it was, I just appreciated it on a different level.
Good answer.
I mean, what kind of psychopath would you have to be if you wanted wrestling to be real? The way that you see it on TV, if that was real life, ooh.
Well, if you think about it, when you have 5 guys come out and jump one guy in real life, that's assault. You'd be taken to jail,
Right, exactly.
Plus, just think about all those Batman villains, that we had,
Well, I'll tell you, when I would watch Nikolai come out and shatter fruit in his bare hands, it was like a supervillain. I mean, the guy literally had superpowers. I couldn't smash fruit in my bare hands.
But I'm sure you tried.
Yeah, unsuccessfully. One night I was on the road as an agent with Nikolai, and we're sharing a hotel, and he gets up like 5, 6 in the morning. He's doing hundreds of push-ups with these old school Russian blocks. Not Russian. He's really Croatian. So he's doing these push-ups with the blocks, and then he's like, Evan, let's arm wrestle. And I'm like, okay. And I literally couldn't move him 1 inch, not 1 inch. And this is how powerful this guy was. So like superheroes and supervillains. I mean, Bruno could bench press 500 pounds or whatever. I mean, these guys were like really, like I said, superpowers, especially as a kid. As a kid, they were 10 feet tall, and all great performers are 10 feet tall. When I go to see James Brown or Al Green or Marvin Gaye, they were 10 feet tall. It's great, just charisma and talent. And as a kid, you're looking at it very differently. Even today, if somebody's great, sometimes it's funny. Sometimes I'll meet a celebrity, and I'm like, wow, I'm taller than this guy, because on stage you're like in awe,
Well, you're a tall guy. You're what, 6'3", 6'4"?
6'2.5", yeah.
We'll say 6'4". When you were little, you used to wait outside Madison Square Garden, and you would meet the wrestlers, and of course they were larger than life. How was that as a kid, seeing these real life superheroes before your eyes?
It was an interesting experience as a kid, especially when I didn't quite get it all, didn't quite comprehend it all. I'm like, wow, George Steele talks,
right?
And Lou Albano's nice, and Andre the Giant and Dusty Rhodes aren't signing autographs for the kids, and Billy Graham's nice, and he's signing for everybody. So you're kind of like figuring it out, like up close and personal as a kid, and sometimes the heels are very nice and the faces aren't quite as nice. Bruno always signed. Bruno was super nice, and Tito Santana always signed, and most of them did, but a few of them, especially, it was disillusioning when it was one of your heroes who didn't want to be bothered.
Now, how did you go from being a fan and then you led up to doing the Wrestling Then and Now newsletter, which would come out monthly, I believe, or were they annuals?
It was monthly. What happened was I was laid off. I was laid off from a job, and I had time on my hands. And I said, why don't I do a wrestling newsletter or sheet or zine or fanzine or whatever you want to call it at the time. But rather than just do the same news and over analysis of TV matches and such and pay-per-views, what I did was just pour my guts out, about my experiences. And if you talk to any older fan, what they're going to tell you is, as a kid, some of your greatest childhood memories were going to wrestling with your dad, your mom, your grandfather, your grandmother, your uncle, your aunt, whoever it was that took you. Because now they're gone. 20, 30, 40 years later. And so I just took a whole different approach, and like, let's do writing instead of just, recording results and analyzing often meaningless angles. And I just came at it from a different way. And along the way, guys like Kowalski started writing for us, and it was a great experience, but like many things, the technology ultimately, hurt it. I mean, everything was free on the internet, and people weren't reading physical. Even newspapers today are struggling to survive. So we had a 20-year run with it, so I can't really complain.
How was it like meeting Killer Kowalski for the first time?
It was surreal because, as Lanny will tell you, he was very, very shy. He was very quiet, and he would just kind of look at you from across the room. So you would have to start the conversation. And once you broke the ice, the guy was very intelligent and worldly and warm, and he would take his camera all over the world and take pictures of everything from wrestlers to exotic locales to insects, whatever the case may be. He was a master photographer. He wrote poetry. He was an expert on nutrition. He was a very interesting, worldly person. And as much as I loathe certain things about the internet, it really means a lot to me when I see, on the 10th anniversary of Walter Killer's death, people are speaking so fondly of him. And even Nikolai, who just passed, Bret Hart posted, Nikolai Volkoff was the nicest man I ever met in pro wrestling. I mean, what could, what's higher praise than that? So it's nice that the internet keeps the memories of these guys alive. And there are guys, Lanny will tell you, there are some great, great wrestlers that history hasn't been kind to because their career peaked before, the mid-'80s revolution. It peaked before the technology and the internet hit. Like guys like John Tolos. Tolos was as great a heel as, ever walked the face of the earth, and there's not a lot of footage of him. There's not a lot of video. So when you see people talking about him, it makes you feel good. It's like, it's a form of immortality because not everybody, had the benefits of the media. Like Nikolai's good. Nikolai was there during the peak period. You could watch 80 hours a week of Nikolai footage if you chose to. But guys like John Tolos, that's not the case. Just not the case.
Evan, we've had a few deaths just lately. Did you know Dick Slater or Don Leo Jonathan?
Don Leo Jonathan's actually in 350 Days. I don't know. I didn't know him personally. And Dick Slater I never dealt with whatsoever, so you'd be best to talk about them on a personal level.
Actually, him and my brother were friends in Atlanta. I wrestled Dick Slater about 5 times in the WWE. And but I can't say I know him, but my brother liked him a lot. And whenever they would travel together, guess what they talked about? The business and how to figure it out and, make it better. And Randy loved hanging around him because he picked his brain.
Yeah, Dick Slater was one of those old school territory guys who headlined Florida and Georgia. He just headlined all the territories. He was tremendous. Vince brought him in, gave him a, poor gimmick, and he only lasted like a year here, the Rebel. And but Dick Slater was tremendous in his prime, tremendous.
And one of the things about Slater, he had a great personality on his own, but for some reason, he was in love with Terry Funk and he copied him, and I felt that was, I love Terry Funk myself, but you really shouldn't copy somebody that much, Anyway, if you look at the old footage of Dick Slater, you'll notice a lot of Terry Funk in there.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, Terry's... There should be a statue in every major city in America of Terry Funk. While they're taking down statues for political reasons, put up Terry Funk statues.
Put them in other countries as well.
They're tearing down statues all over America. We need Terry Funk statues in city capitals. That would be great.
In the business of professional wrestling, being around it, there are a lot of deaths. And you, Evan, you've experienced a lot of close friends die over the years.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. I'm talking close personal friends. The one that hit me the most was Tiger Khan, who wrestled for the Hearts up in Calgary. This was one of my best friends in the world, and he had the dream. And 20 years back, the smaller guys didn't make it in WWE. This was really, right before the Rey Mysterio era, and the steroids and everything else did him in. They found him dead in bed at 33. So to get that phone call was just devastating. And and Johnny Valiant recently was a very close friend. I'm watching a movie with my wife, and I just go on the internet after the movie, and there's 6 messages. What happened to Johnny? It's like, I don't know. And then you see a news clip, with his bag on the side of the road in Pittsburgh, and the guy's dead. It's not the best way to find out that a friend is gone. So, and literally 2 minutes before I'm about to do my radio show, I get a call that Nikolai died. So I'm just like, I have to perform for 2 hours after finding out that somebody you know and had been on the road with. We went all over the country doing autograph signings, and just it's like when you're Lanny will tell you much more so than me, because Lanny lived it more than I did. When you're on the road with people and you're eating and traveling and sharing rooms, and you really bond with people, and my friend Scott Wilson, who's a wrestling historian, he says this has been a year of incredible loss. Johnny and Nikolai and Don Leo Jonathan and Bruno, and you're never going to replace guys like this. I mean, they were larger than life. They headlined arenas literally around the world, and what can I say? And to know some of them on a very personal level. I mean, Johnny would be sleeping on my couch. I mean, it's very, very hard, very hard.
It's heart-wrenching. I mean, professional wrestling's one of those forms of entertainment where it just seems like people are dropping like flies every week.
Well, the thing with Nikolai, and Lanny will tell you, because Lanny's very health conscious also, everybody thought Nikolai would live to 90. The guy's carrying nuts and fruit, and this guy wouldn't put an unhealthy thing in his mouth. The reason I would room with him when we were doing signings, instead of the Sheik, he's like, Evan, you room with me. Early to bed, early to rise. This guy would be in bed like 9 o'clock, and he'd be up 5 in the morning or whatever. And I thought he'd live to 100. Really, it was so shocking. I mean, logically, I'm not a doctor. I say to myself, at his peak, he was carrying 320, 330, whatever pounds, and that's a strain on your heart. Ultimately, it was heart issues that did him in. But I never thought Nikolai would go at 71. I mean, the average person's living to 80, 81, 82 today, depending, male, female, whatever. So it was very shocking, very, very shocking. And then then psychologically you go, if Nikolai won at 71, what chance do I have? Because this guy was really, really, a health fanatic. So it was very, very heartbreaking would be the word.
I mean, a lot of the wrestlers who pass away, you can kind of, I don't want to say understand, but, they were living by the whole moniker, live hard, play harder, and he wasn't one of those. He was very sensible by all accounts, and it is shocking when you hear something like this happen.
Yeah, when you hear Dick Slater's gone at 67, it's kind of like, Rick James going at 56. It kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. Nikolai didn't make sense to me.
See, I'm shocked every single day that Jake Roberts doesn't die, or the Iron Sheik. Now, I know that DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, saved Jake Roberts from certain death, and I hope he turns his life around, and I hope he doesn't have that relapse thing. But I told you guys, I was told by a mutual friend that Nikolai had a heart attack, and they wanted to give him stents, 2 stents. And he says no, and he left the hospital and died at home. So it was his stubbornness that made him a great man, and it was stubbornness that killed him too.
Yeah. I spoke to Nikolai when he was in the hospital. He called me. He said, I'm feeling better. I'm going home. So it made it that much more shocking. And, it was, this was not the guy you'd expect to go relatively young.
You were really close friends with Nicole Bass as well. Tell us about her and your friendship and some stories about her.
Nicole was larger than life. She'd walk down the street. It was kind of like a parade. Everybody would recognize her. Because Nicole was famous from Howard Stern, even more so than pro wrestling. She was a regular on Howard Stern, which is huge in this country. And and she was very distinctive looking. She was a huge woman, heavily muscled, and again, I would book her for appearances, and just like the life of the party, a lot of fun. But she had health issues. She had concussions. She had pancreatitis, etc., so on. And there were multiple times where you didn't know if she was going to make it or not. And but it's always shocking. I mean, I was literally there on her deathbed. Her girlfriend at the time calls me. I go to the hospital. The night before she died, she's lying there brain dead. And the next morning they pulled the plug. And I just walked out of there. I'm taking the subway home and just shell-shocked. And, she was in her early 50s. And, very, it was a very painful stretch. My mother and 7 friends died within a year and a half, and I still haven't quite gotten over all of it, but you plow ahead, you do what you have to do.
You never do get over it. It's one of those things you just learn to live with and adjust. No,
you lost your brother at a young age. I mean, how do you ever come to terms with that? It's they say time heals all wounds, but it's like my father died 40 years ago. You still feel it. Time makes it better, but it doesn't totally heal things. It's life. It's part of life, but it's also people that you love dearly and were very close with, and again traveled with, and spent quality time with, and it's. I mean, look, Lanny lost his entire family the past 7 or 8 years. Lanny could certainly tell you.
Well, I just keep my mind on the positive. I still have my daughter and grandson, and that's pretty great.
Oh yeah, it's always good to be positive. It's just this was all very, very recent, very recent.
Now, you've interviewed a host of people. I mean, you and I have had conversations about a particular interview you had with Eddie Guerrero, and he broke down crying in that interview. You have a way of bringing the best out of people, and you get a lot of emotional impact from it. Tell us about this interview with Eddie.
Sure. I've been doing radio since 1991. I was on a 50,000-watt New York station, WBAI FM 99.5, which is part of Pacifica Radio. And my radio mentor was Fred Giabold, who also passed. He was an old school AWA guy from the Midwest, and he moved to New York, and he did an arts program. And when I was doing my newsletter, he invited me to come on and do wrestling segments, which later, we did music and authors and actors, etc., so on, but we did a lot of wrestling. So we would do phone interviews literally 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning. And we'd call up Eddie Guerrero maybe 2 weeks after his tag team partner, Art Barr, had died. They found Art Barr, I believe, was about 28 years old or so. They found him dead in a hotel room. And Eddie is on the radio, and he's sobbing. And it was the most heart-wrenching interview I've ever done. And the irony is, later they found Eddie dead in a hotel room, And the other interview that really affected me, I was interviewing Sherri Martel, also 3:30 in the morning. And she says to me, I've spent the last 15 years or so on the road. I didn't see my kid grow up. And she got very emotional. And, the sacrifices that these great athletes make, people don't realize the physical toll, the emotional, the psychological, the sacrifices. How do you take care of a pet while you're on the road? How do you raise a son or daughter if you're at that peak period? Our movie's called 350 Days. Some of these guys were wrestling 300 days. Greg Valentine said to me, he said, I wouldn't say 350 days. He said, I would estimate around 320 days he was wrestling in the mid-'80s. 320 days a year. So, how do you raise your kid? it's incredible sacrifices. And I know Johnny Valiant had some guilt, being on the road and being away from the family. And Lanny could tell you better than me. But she was very emotional, Sherri Martel.
We got a great write-up about your memories of that interview on ProWrestlingStories.com. Just search Sherri Martel to see it. And there's something about talking to people at 3:30 in the morning that opens them up.
Oh yeah, I brought in the New Year once, talking to Lou Thez, New Year's Eve on the radio. Same thing with Ivan Koloff and Vern Gagne and Kowalski and Blassie, and I'm going to put this out here publicly. I'm going to put J.P. Zarker on the spot.
Go on.
I have a closet full of interviews with the greatest names in the history of the sport, just sitting on old school audio cassette tapes. If I drop dead, I want J.P. Zarker to preserve these on his radio shows and ProWrestlingStories.com, because it's an oral history. I'm talking. I'm not going to say everybody, because you never speak to everybody, but over the years, most of the greatest legends of the past 30 or so years. Like I said, I started in 1991, and a lot of these guys, had been out there since the 50s before that. So it's really an oral history of this business, and it's just sitting in my closet. And I'm not too tech savvy, so I need a guy like JP who's younger and sharper than me to do this.
Certainly younger. I don't know about sharper, but I know I really appreciate that, and I assure you they are in good hands, and we will do something with those recordings at some point down the line.
It'd be a shame. My wife won't know what it is. She'll toss them in the garbage when I go.
No, put something on a big sticker right on it. Do not throw out. Give to JP. But hopefully we'll be.
Next time I see you, I'll just hand them to you.
Right. Yeah. That's it. I want to talk about how you got involved with the movie The Wrestler and 350 Days as well. But not many people realize this. I know we mentioned it in our first episode, but the reason this show exists is because of you, Evan.
Yeah, I introduced you and Lanny when you came to New York for the 350 Days, premiere, and you guys hit it off and bonded. And what I found over the years is one thing always leads to another, and sometimes it's when you least expect it. And I had Nikolai and Johnny Valiant for an autograph signing in a wrestling store, just like Lanny and I have done many, many times over the years. And we're just sitting there, and the executive producer, Scott Franklin, and people get confused with titles. The executive producer is the money guy. I was the associate producer on The Wrestler. I was the wrestling guy. But anyway, so I'm sitting there with Johnny and Nikolai, and the best friend of the executive producer happens to be there, and he's like, "You guys would be great for this project that we're working on called The Wrestler, and I'd like you guys to come and meet Darren Aronofsky." And, I gave him the contact information, and over the years you get 100 pitches, and Lanny will tell you that, 90 of them don't come through, but this time they actually called. So next thing I know, I'm sitting with Aronofsky, the screenwriter, Scott Franklin, the producer, and we're just chatting, and everybody hit it off. They just hit it off, and Johnny Valiant's there, Nikolai's there, Tiger Khan, Nikolai's manager, and we just, everybody. So next thing I know, some time goes by, and they offer me. They go, "You'd be perfect as the associate producer. You have all these contacts and blah, blah, blah." And basically I was the wrestling guy. So I brought in Ring of Honor. I brought in Necro Butcher. I brought in Ron Killings. If you remember, Ron Killings was briefly wrestling Romeo Roselli in one scene in The Wrestler. And Mickey Rourke is sitting in the stands over at Jersey All Pro. And here's a funny story. Lanny will tell you. I brought in Lanny, and Aronofsky's like, Lanny looks too good. Lanny doesn't look beaten down. Lanny doesn't fit. Remember that, Lanny?
He said I looked like a game show host, and I said, "Look at this studio filled with glamorous prizes."
Yeah.
You should have grown your beard out a bit, Lanny, so you could have been in The Wrestler.
Oh, man, my beard was mostly crayon at the best.
And a funny story with The Wrestler, that really tragic convention scene, I was pitching Darren Aronofsky. I said, Darren, why don't you let me bring in all the guys? Let me bring in Albano and Nikolai and Jimmy Valiant, and let me bring in all these guys. It'll be an unbelievable scene. And he wavered on it. He was debating, and finally he goes, no. Why? Because he felt Mickey would look like the what's wrong with this picture. He'd be in the middle of all these legitimate guys. And if you look at that scene, the only two actual wrestlers in there was Johnny Valiant, who didn't have his hair dyed, so he didn't look like Johnny Valiant, and Manny Yarborough, who was a sumo and a wrestler and a UFC guy. And the rest were all extras who just looked, rugged. And so that never really materialized the way I envisioned it. But what did happen was I was on the set, and Darren looks at me, and he gets this smirk, and he goes, "Come here, Evan." I'm like, "Yeah." Next thing I know, I'm acting in that scene. It was total improv. Mickey just whispers in my ear, "Improv it." He thinks I'm an actor. I've never acted in my life. So I'm just thinking, what would I say to a famous wrestler who I loved as a kid? And I just thought, I loved you as a kid. I saw you at the Garden. Can I have your autograph? And Mickey looks at me and he goes, "What's your name?" So I'm thinking for a second because we're improving it. And I go, "Evan." So I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. How surreal this is.
You couldn't think of a better name than that.
Yeah. So that's my 30 seconds of immortality. So they'll be playing that movie 100 years from now because Mickey's performance is so great. I think it's comparable to Brando and On the Waterfront, particularly when he does the scene where he goes, "I'm just a broken down piece of meat." It's an unbelievable performance. He won the Golden Globe. He was nominated for the Oscar. He didn't win. Sean Penn won that year, but I don't think you'll ever see a better performance.
I mean, that movie was made on a budget, too, and did you guys ever envision that it would grow to be as big as it did?
Well, it was done on $6 million.
Oh, well, never mind budget.
Oh no, that's a budget. That's a low budget. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, $6 million. That's 6 lifetimes.
That's nothing. I mean, Darren wanted $18 million, and we ended up with $6 because Mickey's name wasn't what it was at the time. And am I allowed to curse on your show?
Oh yes.
Yeah, you can swear.
Okay. So. We're at the wrap party. The whole thing's finished, and Darren gets the mic and he does this little speech, and he goes, quote, "I don't know what the fuck we have, but we have something here." So, no, we didn't actually know how big it would be, and when I say big as a critical success, It made about $40 million domestic. It wasn't the Avengers or Spider-Man, but critically, it's something we're all so proud of. And, create art. Don't create crap. Create art. And that's what Darren decided to do. I'll tell you another quick story. He says, "Evan, we're going to go pick up Nicolas Cage." I'm like, okay. So we meet Nicolas Cage in the basement of the Hammerstein Ballroom. They're having a Ring of Honor show because we couldn't get the funding that we wanted with Mickey. And he was wavering again. So Nicolas Cage, it was my job to show him around and introduce him to everybody. And he thought Ring of Honor was like UFC. He thought it was real. So
no kidding.
It was a great night. I mean, Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson. I mean, just this was a while back. And
2006 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the wrestler came out in 2008, so this was obviously before then. So,
right.
So after the fact, when we have a meeting, and Darren's like, Nicolas Cage looks too healthy, because at the time he was in his early to mid 40s, and he was actually in good physical shape, and he looked good, and he's like, Mickey's right for the part. So he actually went with the less marketable actor because he wanted to create the movie that he envisioned, and he stuck to his guns, and much respect, because a different director would have gone for the money. He went for the movie that he wanted to create.
I can't imagine Nicolas Cage in that role. And you were also involved in the movie 350 Days, which just came out in July. Tell us about that.
Sure. Darren Antola and Fulvio Cesare and David Wilkins are the producers, and basically they hired me to do much of what I did for The Wrestler. Get the word out, use various contacts, just basically the same associate producer. An associate producer works for the producers. So basically, whatever they would ask me to do, I did, and also was part of the publicity campaign. And Lanny was very gracious. He did a ton of interviews for us. And just to update everybody, we played in nearly 400 theaters nationwide for Fathom. That was a one-nighter. And we're in the process now of finalizing a distribution deal, so we should very shortly have a major announcement, and it will get seen. And it's the right time. And why do I say that? For example, Ric Flair on ESPN. Jake the Snake was a huge success on Netflix. Andre the Giant's movie got seen by a zillion people on HBO. The interest is there. The market is there. The forums to show it are there. And it's like a golden age of documentaries to begin with. There's just so many places to show documentaries. And, I'm not naive. Again, this doesn't mean it'll be the Avengers or Spider-Man or whatever. It's a documentary, but we are confident that it'll get seen. And the response was so positive. I mean, Lanny saw it. I mean, we did our best to make a quality movie.
It was awesome. I mean, for me to fly out to New York for this from London, a lot of our listeners don't realize this, but I've been teaching for 10 years. And in England, where I live, our school year ends at the 3rd or 4th week of July. So this was, I believe, the 5th of July or something. So I still had a couple of weeks left in the school year. I asked my principal, I'd like to go to New York for this event. One of my writers, Evan, is going to be, he's associate producer. He's got a movie coming out. Can I go? And she's like, I'll think about it. She got back to me a couple days later and saying, you know what, you live once, go to New York. And, through this trip, I met you, Evan, in person, Lanny, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, J.J. Dillon, you name it, a who's who. So that was exciting. But to see this movie and the response from the people, I mean, Bob Backlund was in the theater with us watching this as...
Joe Gertner. I love Joe Gertner from ECW.
Joe Gertner, he was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a good conversation with him. And, Hollywood from Glow, and just people just showing up as fans just to watch it, not because they were involved, because they believed in the project. And it really portrayed a real image of what life was like on the road. I mean, the whole premise of it is 350 days on the road each year. And, like you said, it was probably closer to 320, what have you. But the reality was there. And just how many people were interviewed? I think over 90 and 30 some are in it.
Yeah, it was something like 90. It was done over several years, and different people did interviews, and and unfortunately, about 10 of them are gone at this point, including Don Leo Jonathan. So we have like a laundry list of guys who have passed since then, and some of them, it was their last interviews. And again, you're preserving history and oral history, and not a lot of guys, were following the Wolfman around with a camera and microphone. It's great to have captured it on film, and you never know down the road. There could be the director's talking about a director's cut, and there's always DVD extras and such. So there's a lot of footage that hasn't been seen, and we'll see how far we could take it over the near future.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, 60 wrestlers didn't even make the cut, and as you said, 10 of the ones that did are no longer with us, because that was a 7-year process, the filming of this movie. And so to see it all come together, it was special. It was really great to watch.
Yeah, people have no idea what goes into making a movie, the business end of it, the stress, the thousands of hours of editing. If you're going to make a movie, you almost have to go in with the idea this is something you need to do, that you're passionate about, that you just have to do it, because there's no guarantee you're going to get rich from it, certainly, and there's been endless horror stories where people have lost their shirts. So you really have to be passionate about something, and The Wrestler was one of the great experiences of my life. And I think when the smoke clears, this is going to end up being seen and cherished, and there's an audience for this. There's a lot of old school fans who, just the other day when Don Leo died, I just, you just felt the sadness. I grew up with Don Leo, especially, the Canadian fans, and yeah.
Now you do, you're still doing radio. You were mentioning how you did it back in the day, but you're doing it with Village Connection Radio. Every Sunday, you get a lot of guests on your show, from musicians to wrestlers to artists to poets. Tell us about this.
Sure. I grew up on Joe Franklin and Johnny Carson, of course, and Ed Sullivan, and Dick Cavett and Arsenio Hall, and I just like a variety format. And for example, this Sunday I have on 2 musical acts and a wrestler. My radio mentor, Fred Giabold, referred to wrestling as the proletarian performance art, theater for the people. So to me, a wrestler who's colorful, charismatic, a good talker is a great guest, and you can mix him or her with musicians and artists and
poets.
Poets, and I'll have a wrestler sitting next to a poet, and it works. It works.
A gospel singer on the other end of the couch.
Exactly. Here's my dream. Here's my dream show. I'd like to have an ex-president sitting next to a porn queen, sitting next to like Terry Funk. I think that would be like the greatest show of all time.
That would be good. That would be unhinged.
Yeah, just let them all, you have like somebody who's laid back, like a Bill Clinton. See, that would be like a dream show to me. That would be colorful. Lanny's the perfect guest for the show.
Yeah, me and Stormy Daniels, right?
That's right. Lanny, Stormy Daniels, Terry Funk, and, an ex-president. That would be a show. That would be a show. It would work. Everybody would just, sit there and chat, and somehow it would make sense.
Let's make it happen. Like a circus sideshow act on Village Connection Radio.
Stranger things have happened. Joe Franklin, I don't know if Lanny saw Joe Franklin.
Oh, yes, I did. I certainly did.
Okay, good. Because he would have like Betty Davis sitting next to Lou Albano. And it was just surreal. It was surreal. But somehow it worked. And I'm like, there's no rules to any of this. And then guys like Letterman came along, and he didn't take it so seriously. And you're like, okay, let's just have fun. And radio radio is a blank canvas. You may have certain restrictions as far as language. You may have certain restrictions as far as how long you could go, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever the case may be. But it's a blank canvas, and you can do what you like with it. And my show you could watch because it's on video as well. So even, that enhances it as well. We could show video clips. It's almost like a hybrid, TV and radio show.
Now, of course, over the years, you've become friends with a lot of people in the business of professional wrestling. And, when I was in New York, one day you had Greg Valentine sleeping on your couch, and then the next day, Lanny Poffo. I would watch a reality TV show called Evan's Couch just to see the stories of the people who've come to your house and slept at your place. And tell me about who are some of the people who have slept on your couch?
Johnny Valiant, Lanny, Greg. I'm trying to think. I had one day we were doing a convention in Baltimore and waiting outside of my house. It was like the WWE Hall of Fame. There was Albano and Nikolai and who else? Jimmy Valiant. They were all like standing outside my house. It was surreal. It was absolutely. I'm like, as a kid, I wouldn't have believed this. And we made our way to Baltimore. And Lanny, were you with us for that trip? Seika was there, the porn queen, and
I definitely was not. I would have remembered Seika.
Yeah, Fred Williamson, the Hammer. It was, it was just it's an honor to be amongst, these legends and. To call some of them friends and, but the other side of it is it's not always that glamorous after a while. You see a lot of guys who are on the way down, like movie stars and singers and such. So, how many times, Lanny will tell you, how many times can you look across a convention and there's Virgil and Sonny and, after a while, Missy Hyatt. After a while, it doesn't feel that glamorous. It doesn't feel that glamorous sometimes.
You cannot go to a convention without seeing Virgil or even on a subway.
Yeah, Virgil's always there selling his gimmicks somewhere. But I'll tell you, the guy's always been pleasant. I never once had a bad experience with him. He's a pleasant enough guy.
Well, I can't say that, but thank you for saying that, okay?
Okay.
Maybe your definition of pleasant is different than mine, but anyway, the good thing about Virgil, when Ted DiBiase's around, he's in much better behavior.
Oh, okay. Well, I ever get is, hey, brother, how are you? And what's up? Handshake. I mean, that's my entire interaction. I don't know. So you would know better than me.
Hey, brother, give me some of that fuck money. Now you piqued my interest, Lanny. Are you open to sharing a story about Virgil?
No, let's skip it. We're going to talk about wrestlers instead.
I see what you did there.
See what I did there? Oh, you guys never let me get away with a little, you always catch me and stuff. But anyway, Virgil's got a GoFundMe page. He's determined to be a millionaire. I think he's raised 38 cents.
Wow. I read that one of the Kardashians did that, and people sent her like all kinds of money.
She went on GoFundMe. One of the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's not a bad idea. Just have stupid fans send rich people money. Oh my God.
This is how the rich get richer. I mean, I heard something popped up on my Facebook or something. It was trending the other day as a highlight. You need to see this. One of the Kardashians had cereal with milk for the first time. And I'm like, fuck that. I mean, what kind of life are they living?
Wow, that's really sacrificing.
I know. We're actually killing the ears of our listeners even mentioning that name on our show, the Kardashians. So we'll move on.
One of the Jenners got a penectomy and a castration. Does that count?
It does.
They turned a pole into a hole.
Wow.
How do we segue from there? So what are you up to these days, Evan? I know you're teaching, you're doing your radio show, you write for the site when you have some time.
I'm going to be acting in a couple of indie films with Christopher Anino coming up. And Lanny would like this. Next weekend in Connecticut, there's a vaudeville convention. So we're going to be part of that. Angel Orsini from ECW and Glow from Hollywood. And Hollywood from Glow, I should say. Hollywood
Right.
from Glow. And, yeah, that's going to be fun. A vaudeville convention. And Chris Anino in 2018 is making silent films. Silent films. So maybe we could get Lanny involved somehow. He'd be perfect. It's I'm going to be able to tell people that I'm so old I made silent films because I'm going to be acting in one. So that's going to, you know, I think Lanny and I kind of see the world the same way. You know, it's not always about money. A lot of it's enjoy the ride, experience things, and you never know how far something will go. I mean,
well, one of my quotes is from Albert Einstein, who was an actual genius, not a pretend one like I was. But it said, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." So what does that mean? It's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about the opportunity, or just go there and see what happens. Everything's an experience. It might be good, it might not, but at least you're living and you're alive.
Sure.
And Evan, I have to say, just having gotten to know you over this past year, you know, you're the type of person, and I've always in my own life, through some close loved ones who's passed on before, to live life for two. You're living a life for 8 or 9. I mean, you're in 1 minute you're writing a book, and next you're doing radio, and the next time you're taking 3 trains over to do this. And aren't you doing something with Broadway? Are you going to be helping out with the production soon as well?
Yeah, we're going to be taking a show about wrestling off Broadway in 2019 in the fall. And Jason Static is the brains behind that, and I'm going to be the acting director. So this is going to be an off-Broadway show about wrestling, and that's going to be exciting. And basically the first act, you establish the characters, and the second act, they're actually going to be wrestling on stage, and it's called We Don't Play Fight. We Don't Play Fight. So it's coming to Chicago in the spring, and then it's coming to New York in the fall, and so that's exciting to branch into that. I had taken Johnny Valiant's one-man theatrical show off Broadway in New York, a while back as well. So I do have some experience with this, and yeah, it's like even you guys are doing quality radio. Whether you call it a podcast or radio, to me it's radio. So you don't know how far you could take this. You don't know what it'll lead to. You could be on Sirius satellite in front of millions of people a couple months from now. You don't know where things lead to. When you say no, it closes the door. When you say yes, it opens the door to other possibilities. And I just always say, do quality work from the heart instead of doing crap just for cash. And it just makes the opportunities that much more possible. Like a good example is the movie Once, about the street musicians. They shot it on $120,000. Next thing you know, it wins the Oscar for Best Song, and the guys at the Academy Awards, and he says, quote, create art, because you never know how far it'll take you. And worst case scenario, you enjoy the ride, and it's I don't have a lot of regrets.
You're an inspiration. And I know a lot of our listeners hearing this, hopefully you've inspired people to say no less, within reason, of course, and just live, and sleep is for the dead. do what you can, create art, put yourself out there, and, surrounding myself with people like you, Evan, and Lanny, just very motivating, very inspiring, and I consider myself very lucky to have you both in my life. And Evan, it's been a huge pleasure having you on our show. Truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Let me just say one last thing.
Please.
Pro wrestling stories. There's endless websites out there, and basically they have, for the most part, not a blanket statement, they obsessively, talk about meaningless TV wrestling angles and pay-per-views, and you decided to do quality work with people who can write, with writing about history and writing about things that matter, as opposed to what did the women's division do on Smackdown on Tuesday? You follow? It's much respect to you as well. And I'm not just saying it because you were complimentary. I sincerely mean it. And you're the only website I generally write for. It's you and Mark Madison's website, basically. I don't have a lot of respect for much of what's out there.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot. And of course, let's put a shout out to Mark Madison. He's written a few pieces for ProWrestlingStories.com. He's got the website ProWrestlingPost.com. He's done tons of interviews. He's a really lovely guy. I mean, I think that's just a tradition from Canada, just a big heart, good person. You write for him. And if it weren't for him, obviously you and I wouldn't have met. So thank you, Mark, if you're listening. And, as you say, create art, do things from the heart, and good things will come. And surround yourself with good people. And I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job every week. I listen to you guys every week. And Lanny, I just want to say, when you had was it Typhoon the other week, right?
Tugboat,
rather. Yeah, they were partners. Tugboat. You had Tugboat on the other week, and what he was saying was very inspirational. He was saying, enjoy life and be happy. I'm paraphrasing, but I was listening to it, and I'm like, this is what radio should be about. Again, it wasn't just about wrestling angles. He says, I walk around with a smile.
Oh, yes. I just made a mistake. Tugboat is Typhoon. Okay.
Yeah, one and the same.
Yeah, and the Shockmaster and all that. He's had so many gimmicks.
We were both right.
Yeah, I'm wrong again. Yeah, that genius thing is so hard to live up to.
Yeah.
We're very much lucking out with our guests on the show thus far. I mean, it's even Jim Duggan on our show. He had some fantastic bits of advice, and he's been there, done that. So we consider ourselves lucky. And we just, we'll see where things go. We're bringing back the past. Hopefully we're being able to provide a way to distract people from, the things that are happening in their lives, good or bad.
And whenever I talk about Lanny, I go, Lanny transcends wrestling. Lanny can talk about pop culture. Lanny can talk about history. Lanny's been around the world. It's like, a lot of the wrestlers, they're very worldly. They've been literally everywhere, and that's exaggerated, but I mean literally around the world, and the experiences and the just the awareness. Johnny Valiant wrestled in front of oil sheiks 3 a.m. in the Middle East. Some of these guys have wined and dined with kings and queens, literally, and just some amazing experiences. So if you're going to do a podcast, a radio show, a TV show, whatever the case may be, why limit it to, gee, what about that angle on Raw Monday night? There's more interesting things to discuss.
Well, tune in next week. I'm going to talk about fjords I've been to.
There you go. Well, I'd be more interested in that than a lot of the stuff on TV.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about fjords. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I was already starting to come up with some ideas in my head. We could do just like, and then the following week, we're going to talk about creeks.
And dams. Dam.
And guests on our show will be Claude.
Let's talk about the Byzantine Empire.
You know what? If we're going to talk history on our show, why not open it up? I mean, I've taught history for 10 years. That is one of my passions. Let's do it. We could talk all about the Norman conquest in England as well, William the Conqueror.
William the Conqueror.
Yeah, we're boring our listeners.
Let's talk about William Wallace.
There you go. Scotland.
I was up late last night watching documentaries on how Mengele escaped, Dr. Mengele, and the Malay massacre in Vietnam. I mean, history is fascinating, and sometimes the guilty do not get punished. So much for karma. That Malay massacre, the only guy that saw jail time was Cowley, from what the documentary was saying.
Yeah, let's talk about Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon and how many men they killed for nothing.
Yeah. I'll tell you, as a kid, I'm watching TV, and Nixon comes out, and he quits on TV. I'm a kid. I'm watching this. I'm like, I never saw a president quit on TV. How bizarre was that, Lanny? Well, you were older. You probably got it more than I did. I didn't get it.
Well, he was trying to avoid the big impeachment, so, he did the right thing for the first time.
I'm just saying how bizarre it was to watch this.
But see, I'm older than you guys, so I have friends that are dead from Vietnam, so naturally I'm much angrier.
Sure.
On a blasé note like that, let's go.
On that positive note.
I just want to say, Evan, thank you for your years of friendship. Stay off the croak list, and you are one guy that's done a lot of business with me, and you don't owe me a penny.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Lanny, and Lanny I consider a friend, not a client. And my wife loves Lanny, and you're always, welcome here. And that's what we're going to do. Next time JP's in town, we'll do a reality show with Lanny on the couch. What do you think, JP?
Evan's couch. We'll set up a webcam, but don't forget to turn it off at night.
And we're going to talk about my favorite subject, fjords.
Yes. We've joked about this, and just Evan and I, about doing a little bit of a road show. Lanny, let's put Greg Valentine on board, Tito, what have you, and just go town to town and just pick up a mic, have no notes, and just share stories. I think this is something that would be amazing. I'd like to do this at some point.
What do you think, Lanny?
I'm in with you guys. Whatever you want to do, I'm in.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, and it's a very simple format. You have Q&A. You have road stories. Lanny could do some poems. I think it would work. I think it would actually be fun. It would be entertaining, and Lanny, you could even do a one-man show like about your life. That would be interesting.
I'm willing to try it if you are. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Let's do it, Evan. We're gonna have you on the show again. An absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
All right, and I'm holding you to transcribing all of my 40 years of 30 or so years of wrestling radio tapes down the road. We want to share that with the public. That'll be my legacy.
He's going to make it digital, and it's going to be easy. So
we'll do it that way, and I need to multiply myself to transcribe it, but we'll definitely put it out there in audio format sometime down the line. Next time I'm in New York, I think it's going to be sometime in 2019. We'll make sure it happens. We'll come over, we'll grab some of those tapes, and we'll put it out there for you all.
Yeah, that would be, I'll tell you, over the years, basically a who's who. It's a shame for it to sit in the closet. It's been bothering me for decades now. So JP's darker.
We'll take that off your shoulders there and take it out of the closet.
This is what is known in show business as the long goodbye. But anyway, Evan, thank you for being such a mensch, and I really appreciate it all the years. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Evan's one of the nicest, sweetest men on earth. I mean, I think that was able to come across in our recording with him today.
Oh, yes, he's a real mensch, and if you don't know what that is, look up Yiddish expressions.
And, just talking to him, I mean, just the other day, I was up at 1 a.m. I think I was editing our show, and he was sharing with me Brazilian music. And I'm responding with, oh, you got to check out this band from Nigeria, And it's just the type of person where talking about wrestling is actually doesn't come up. He's just got a lot of worldly thoughts. He's got a lot of interests in so many different arts. I mean, on Facebook, he's got Evan Ginzburg's supporting independent music page. He's got his historical wrestling page, and he's got his radio page. And he's the type of person where you could just talk about anything, and it's an absolute pleasure every time that we talk.
And you can blame it on the bossa nova, the dance of love. That's a Brazilian.
There you go. And God, what was the song he was playing for me the other day? It was like, it's been voted the best song in Brazil's history. What I'll do is I'll do a bit of post-editing magic, and I'll play that at the end for our listeners to hear. Any parting thoughts from you, Lanny?
Yeah, a lot of wrestlers, I go to a lot of wrestling schools. They bring me in to do seminars. I even, go to different countries to do this. And they said, what is the most important lesson you can teach us? And I said, well, I've got 2 lessons. Number 1, ask yourself this question every day. If I were a fan, would I pay to see myself? And if the answer is yes, why? If the answer is no, why not? And the other more practical, more pragmatic thing I would like to tell the young wrestlers, when you go pay to see a wrestling match, always bring your suitcase. You never know who's not going to show up.
Always be prepared.
Yeah, and be there with your gear and say, hey, listen, I'm a wrestler, and if you need an extra wrestler, if somebody doesn't show up, I'm the man. I've got my gear. And next thing you know, a lot of guys got their break that way.
Always be prepared, always be on time, and never fail to be polite.
Yeah, and if you're not polite, then shut the fuck up.
And with that, we end this week of the Genius Cast. So long.
Sayonara. Blame it on the bossa nova, the dance of love. Okay.
You've been listening to the Genius Cast with Lanny Poffo. This has been a ProWrestlingStories.com production. Find them on social media at The Genius Cast, at Lanny Poffo, or at JP Zarka. If you'd like to advertise to thousands of dedicated listeners on the show each week, send an email to thegeniuscast@prowrestlingstories.com. Until next time.
Oh, yeah!